We're joined today at Oil and Money by Mark Brownstein, Senior Vice President for Energy and Environmental Defense Fund. Mark, welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Now, for the last 2 days, we've heard from major oil companies, we've heard from service companies. What has struck you most about the conversation and the tone over these previous sessions?
Well, I would say the one thing that really jumps out at me is how deeply embedded issues of climate change and energy transition are now embedded in the mainstream conversation of the oil and gas industry. I've been spending many years working with this industry, and 5 years ago this would have been an exotic topic and maybe not one for polite company. And today it is very much a baseline concern, a baseline challenge, and it's very interesting to hear the companies individually talk about how they're working to address it.
At a conference that's Oil and Money, we're hearing more and more about climate and the impact on oil and money.
Oil, money, and energy transition.
And now, the IPCC climate report that has recently been generating a lot of headlines and a lot of concern. Is there a disconnect between the urgency that we're reading in the IPCC report and the pace that industry is moving to address some of these issues where they are central?
Well, there's no question that these are large global enterprises, and they don't turn to new business models and new sources of revenues quickly or easily. So I understand the challenge that many of these CEOs face, and yet what the IPCC is telling us is, in fact, we need to move quicker. We're seeing the disastrous effects of climate change today, and we're seeing more of those effects sooner than even some of the models a few years ago would have predicted. And so while it is hard to make that transition, accelerating that transition is going to be imperative for companies that want to remain profitable for shareholders but want to be socially responsible as well.
Now, these discussions have ranged across technology, they've talked about policy. Is there an area that maybe we're overlooking? Is there an element of this discussion that we're missing?
Well, you know, one of the things that sort of also has struck me over the course of the last few days is the number of CEOs that talk about reducing methane emissions from their oil and gas operations, right? Very few people appreciate the fact that methane, man-made methane, drives about 25% of the warming our planet is experiencing right now. We've spent the last 5 or 6 years out in the field studying this issue, and what we have learned is the majority of these methane emissions from the oil and gas industry essentially come from leaks and malfunctioning of equipment, and sometimes worker error associated with operations. So as I think about the industry and its talk about the digital oil field, as I think about this industry and how it talks about the great shift change that's taking place as old employees retire and new employees come into the industry, I'm really thinking about how do we use technology and educate the new generation of workers, right, to be more effective and efficient in managing operations so that you can avoid these methane emissions in the first instance.
So methane is perhaps as much a people problem as one of policy.
People and technology. This really does come back around to the core competency of the industry to manage its operations effectively. I think that's part of the reason why the financial community has picked up on the methane issue as such a significant indicator as to how well your business is being run.
Mark, thank you for joining us. Some food for thought perhaps for next year's conference.
Thank you very much.